Welcome to the Ocal's channel. Thanks for watching today, and let's continue our journey to finish every single Game Boy and Game Boy Color game. Today focused on a game called Alone in the Dark, A New Nightmare for the Game Boy Color. Now this game here is pretty much a technical marvel for the system because they basically took a PlayStation 2 game and ported it over to the Game Boy Color, and they were pretty faithful as far as like keeping the same atmosphere, the graphics, the gameplay, and just overall mechanics of the game. Obviously, they had to downgrade it quite a bit, shorten the game quite a bit, but I mean, just look at the graphics here on the screen. This is very, very impressive for the Game Boy Color, and I think most people at the time who actually purchased the game bought it because it was almost like a tech demo of what the Game Boy Color could do, and they simply wanted to be blown away of like how powerful a handheld system could be back in the early 2000s. Now, as far as like how well does the game hold up, it's a little rough around some of the edges, but truth be told, it's a very playable game. You can finish it like an hour, and I personally had an overall good time with it. Now, this particular game did get moved up in the queue a good bit because Lord Gaiek requested my earlier videos to cover it sooner than later, so naturally moved it up in the queue. If there's a game that you want to see me cover sooner than later, let me know the name of the game in the comments down below, and just like Alone in the Dark, I'll move it right on up. Now, I'd like to start the videos off looking at the box art for the game first, and the box art for Alone in the Dark is pretty much exactly the same as the PlayStation 2 game, which makes sense because it is a port of that game, but it basically shows your primary protagonist here, Edward Carnby, approaching Alan Morton's mansion, and he's the one who's basically, he's a rich billionaire, and he's discovering an ancient Native American civilization, trying to figure out how to basically become a lord of the underworld. We're going to get into all that story a little bit later, but that's the overall atmosphere here. There's a lot of light coming in off to the side, and I think Alone in the Dark really does have a lot to do with like, you know, light or flashlights and such as that. And I can't really say like that's a big mechanic in the game, but it is pretty much portrayed on the cover pretty majorly there. But overall, it's a fine cover because it's basically the same as the PlayStation 2. Now, when you load the game up here, you have the title screen. It says the name of the game, the light coming in from behind it. I've already talked about how the flashlight is symbolic of the series. And then the main menu screen here is going to show basically a revamp of the cover in 8-bit fashion. And even like the menu select has like a little flashlight beside it. So I feel like there is some flashlight imagery or some flashlight mechanics that are missing a little bit from the Game Boy Color version here. And as a side note, this is the only game or only Alone in the Dark game I have ever played. So you can correct me if I'm wrong about some like overall mechanics of the series. Now, when you start your save file up here, you're going to get a pretty prolonged cutscene explaining the background story of the game, why you're heading to Alan Morton's house to begin with. And honestly, like the cutscene graphics here, even though it's just simply still images, the idea they look as good as they do on the Game Boy Color is pretty phenomenal. I mean, like, I know some PlayStation 1 games out there at this time period that did not look this good as far as image-wise goes. So honestly, it's pretty impressive. But the phone rings. Edward Carnby, who's your main protagonist, he answers the phone. And on the other line is Aline Cedrak, and she is calling Edward to basically recruit him on a mission to go to Alan Morton's mansion to rescue a statuette that he has stolen that has basically Native American mystical powers here. Now, Edward was actually not her first choice to go on this mission. Edward's best friend, Charles Fisk, was her first choice. He went on the mission, did not rescue the statuette, and Alan Morton actually murdered him. And so now she's calling Edward to go on the mission, basically to avenge his best friend's death and try to rescue the statuette. So to some degree, it's like she's manipulating him and using his best friend's death to really get him to go on this mission. I don't know, there's probably some more background on these characters in the other Alone in the Dark games, but from the Game Boy Color version, it does feel a little bit manipulative of Aline to do this to poor Edward here. But anyway, they're on their way here. They get on a plane. They're flying off across the ocean. She does give a little bit more background as far as like the statuette's powers, as far as like able to open up portals to the underworld, such as that. And Alan is basically a billionaire who is using his funds to, I guess, harness these powers to become an overlord himself. But as far as like what we need to know, Edward is heading to the island, needs to kill Alan Morton, get the statuette, and avenge his best friend, and bring the statue back to the archaeologist here. Now, when you get off the boat, she does tell you that she can call you on your walkie-talkie, and you're supposed to answer it anytime that she rings. I actually never experienced a walkie-talkie ringing. I don't know if I just simply missed that in my playthrough, but maybe that's a mechanic that didn't really fully develop. I don't know. You can let me know in the comments down below, but I never actually got any communication from her throughout the entire game here. But as you're journeying off here, like, you basically have a pre-rendered image that's sort of been scanned in, probably from the PlayStation 2 version if I was guessing, and then they have your character who can basically traverse across the image here and basically interact with different aspects of the environment or move on to a different screen screen, which will load up a different pre-rendered scanned in image. And as far as like what it looks really darn good. It reminds me of like a PlayStation 1 game, like some of the earlier Final Fantasy games, like Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9. As far as like a scanned in background, you sort of get to traverse around it, or like even like the early Resident Evil game. Honestly, whichever game you want to compare it to, it does feel and look most closely aligned like a PlayStation 1 game instead of what was going on in the Game Boy Color at the time. And one more thing about the graphics, it's not just simply a scanned in image. They actually try to put some animations in the background as well, as far as like having like little red eyes in some of the trees, you know, blinking here and there. And I mean, it's not like major effects, but it's more to make the background environment a little bit more immersive as you're journeying through it. Now, as you continue working your way through the opening area here, which is a forest, you're going to find like little items on the ground. You can go up and you press B on them. You'll get things like a potion or like bullets for your revolver, later on a shotgun or a crossbow. And there's also plenty of other things you can interact with in the environment as well. If you just simply walk up to it and press B, you can like look out windows or open up chests or look on tables, things like that. And also like anytime there's a glimmering item on the screen, that's going to be a key item you're going to need to accomplish your individual mission, such as like keys or gardening gloves or explosives, things like that. And so if you just simply look out for like the items or the glimmering items, you can go through the game pretty much with no issue at all. But if you really want to explore the environment, you can press B on like all kinds of stuff. And that's pretty cool that they actually made the game sort of, as you know, as deep or as shallow as you wanted. Now, this particular game mode that you're in right here is not going to be where you do your combat. Every now and then when you walk into an area, there's going to be like a pre-rendered battle you're going to be sucked into. It's not random battle. It's always based upon like where you are on the map. And so like you can be sucked into a battle and then you go into like combat mode. And this looks very similar to like Perfect Dark on the Game Boy Color. It's not as graphically impressive as the other mode, but it's still pretty darn good looking here. And you have more of like a main stance here. Your gun selection is at the top. Your health is over on the left-hand side. And you basically sort of have a 3/4 view, and you're basically aiming at different enemies that are approaching you. Here in the forest, the only enemies that are going to attack you are these like mutant spiders, and they're going to come in waves trying to get to you. Usually maybe like 4 or 5 enemies per like sucked in battle. And you can also get different ammo throughout the battle as well. Anytime you die in battle, it's going to be a game over, so make sure you are saving your game as you journey along. And also, if you run out of ammo in one of these battles, you're going to lose the game as well, so keep an eye on your overall ammunition supplies. But let's get back to the main mission at hand here. So you're going around the island trying to find Alan Morton's mansion, and there are multiple paths that you can go on, but all of them are either going to loop back around or lead to dead ends. So the game gives like the illusion of like a lot of different areas to explore, but truth be told, like you're going to find the correct path pretty darn fast here. And you eventually do approach Alan Morton's mansion. You get a nice little cutscene here. If you go up to the main front door, it says the door is locked, but the wood looks pretty rotted. If you can find a way to sort of, bust your way into the door, that's going to be your best bet instead of finding the key. And so at this point, you do begin to journey on a little bit. We journey off to one area. We do find one key. This key does not fit the front door. It's more like a bronze key, sort of an older looking key. And if you continue journeying through here, you're going to find an old, basically like a shed or like a toolbox of sorts. You can use the key there, and you're going to be able to get some gardening gloves as well as a crowbar, which we all know what we're going to do with the crowbar here in just a second. You can continue to explore out this area a little bit, and you can find some more ammo. There's one scene where you can actually like see somebody like walking a shadow-wise inside the house, and that's sort of haunting. You go up to it and look in the window, and it says like you didn't see anybody, and that's one of those interaction parts like I'm talking about. Like, it's not a glimmering spot. You don't have to interact. If you want to, you can make the game a little bit more haunting for you or mysterious by, interacting with the window and things like that. But we eventually go back to the main front door here. We use our crowbar. We break the door open. We journey into the house, and the house graphics are also pretty darn fantastic here. It reminds me a great deal of like the early Resident Evil games, and I really feel like if they had done a Resident Evil game in this direction on the Game Boy Color, it would have been a massive success. And I know there is a Resident Evil remake on the Game Boy, but I've never played that one, so it may be pretty similar to this. I just simply don't know. But you journey in here, and there's all kinds of stuff that you can explore. There's different stairs that you can go up through. There's different basements that you can go into. There's several different locked doors. One is missing like a doorknob. One you need a key to. And you can get sucked into battles inside the house. And the house battles also look pretty good. You do fight against like dogs inside the house as well as spiders. So they're slowly beginning to advance the enemy selection here as well. Like I said, just keep an eye on your ammunition, and you should be fine inside the battles. Now, after you've explored the house, fairly well here, you're eventually going to loop back around to the staircase, and there's going to be a mirror off to the side, and the mirror has like a little glow behind it, has like a little glisten to it. If you walk up to the mirror, that is when you can actually interact with your old passed away friend, Charles Fisk. Now, when you talk to Charles Fisk, he looks very haunting. inside the mirror here. And he basically tells you that he has been murdered indeed by Alan Morton, and his spirit is sort of stuck in the house pretty much until Alan has been killed away and the statuette that is opening up the underworld has also been destroyed. But he is fairly limited on how much he can talk to us because he says he's pretty weak, and if we find his amulet and bring it back to him, then that will somehow give him enough energy to continue to talk to us. I don't know, I guess that's like how the afterworld spirits work. Maybe they need special amulets to talk to people. I don't know, that seems like a pretty weak explanation. But regardless, we continue on our mission here trying to find the amulet in order to expand the dialogue with Charles. Now we use the keys that we have acquired to find our way into the library, and when we get in there, like the overall aesthetic for the library is top tier. The architecture is very well done, and I even compared it to the PS2 game, and like the angles and the overall structure here is pretty much identical to it. At one point, like the graphics are so good, like you're going down a hallway here, there's like a light in the ceiling, like little bugs are bouncing around the light or journeying around it, like because bugs are, they are attracted to lights there and journey to them. But just the idea they put that much detail into the Game Boy version, it's just very, very impressive, at least to me. You do find some journal pages of Alan Morton's book here, and as you look through the journal pages, you get more of an insight as like Alan's beginning to experiment on different creatures, begin to experiment on opening up the underworld, and sort of losing his mind a little bit in the process. You continue through the library, eventually hit a little switch here. It opens up a hidden rotating door. You can journey into a treasure room, and inside the treasure room, you're going to get yourself a blue crystal key, which we're going to use to open up a blue crystal door. I mean, the puzzles in this game are not really like complex. You know exactly like where every single key is supposed to go. You do get a few more journal page entries. You also end up finding a shotgun, but it's missing the firing mechanism, and you can find a journal page that tells that Morton actually took all the firing mechanisms out of the shotguns, and so his servants couldn't actually defend themselves against all these underworld creatures and experiments that he is creating, which makes him like a truly, truly evil man here. So he's like created these monsters. He knows it's going to kill all the workers in his household, and he purposely disables the weapons so the workers are going to be killed in the process. I mean, that's pretty darn evil there. But we do use the blue crystal key to open up the blue crystal door. We go through here. We do get to collect a few more keys and a few more like fuse boxes that we disable. And we also find the amulet of Charles. If you take the amulet back down to Charles, he's going to appear again. He's going to give you a little bit more background as far as like what Morton is doing here, and even goes as far to say that Morton has transformed himself into some sort of an evil creature, because Morton's overall goal is to rule the underworld and then use the underworld's power to rule the overworld. And so like he wants to be this supreme being, and obviously this sounds like an evil plan that we need to put a stop to. Charles tells us that we need to go to the attic, and in the attic of our shotgun that we found, the firing mechanisms are hidden up there. We can get the firing mechanism, and we can basically reunite our shotgun that we can use to take out more of Morton's evil creatures and possibly Morton himself. So obviously the next stop is the attic. We get up there full of barrels, full of just random junk and whatnot. We do find the firing mechanism. We also find like a box of doorknobs, which we're going to use to open up that door from the very beginning of the game to go down to the cellar. But once we get all these key items here, Charles does appear to us again in spirit form and says that Morton has journeyed his way down into the cellar, and we need to follow him down there in order to take him out. So the doorknobs that we found are going to open up the door to the cellar. We journey down there. The new combat mechanism here is going to appear, or not mechanism, a new combat enemy is going to be more like a four-legged beast, or maybe like the spiders are evolving a little bit. I'm not sure. I can't really tell a whole lot from the Game Boy sprite here, but definitely a new monster is appearing. And as you journey through the crypts here, or you journey through the cellar, you are going to find a bag of gold and silver powder. If you take it over to a particular coffin and you put it on this little gold statue off to the side, the coffin opens up and gives you a silver key, and you can use the silver key to go down into the sewer. Now the sewer sort of cracks me up a little bit because you journey into it, and our main character here, he says like, thank goodness like they actually drained the sewer so I don't have to like, trudge my way through all of this sewage and have to smell all of that. And then like the very next screen is us like up to the waist in sewage, and it's like, why did you put the dialogue in there? Because that's like exactly what we're going to have to do. And so maybe it's like a little twist of irony. Maybe there's something like in the PlayStation 2 version, like a comedy relief that was missing in the Game Boy version. But it just sort of felt odd to say like, thank goodness they drained it, and then it is clearly, obviously not drained as you're journeying through it. And the sewage looks like absolutely terrible here. There's little obstacles that you can lose some life in the sewage as well. And if you walk up to one particular spot, a giant worm will come out and you get like an instant game over. So it's a cool effect here. You never see this enemy, you never fight this enemy, but you get to see the enemy, and a cool effect. But if you hadn't saved your game in a while and this just appears out of nowhere, it feels a little unfair to just like lose all of your progress because you stepped on the one incorrect square. But eventually when you get out of the sewer, you now journey your way into the graveyard, and in the graveyard, you can get your very first look at Morton himself, and he is beginning to transform here. It looks very much like a vampire who's missing an eye, got like an eye patch. We're going to call him a pirate vampire, and he begins to attack you, and like the best strategy for Morton here is just basically come back to the very far edge of the screen so he can only disappear and reappear directly in front of you, because you know you're basically eliminating half the area he can appear at. And so you just sort of stand next to the wall here. Anytime he appears, just fire, and you'll hit him pretty much every single time. He's really not too bad. He does disappear, and you're like, did I kill him? Did I not kill him? I'm not really sure. You can interact with like a little statue here. You get yourself a carved rock out of that. But then you journey your way back to the castle, and you have to find a new way into the mansion or into the castle here. And you find this large vine off to the side. You can put on your gardening gloves, and you get to climb up the castle walls. And the outside the castle here is a really fantastic environment as well. Really reminds me like a little bit of like a Dark Souls environment, and makes me think like, what would a Dark Souls game look like in this style on the Game Boy? Now that is something I would truly enjoy seeing if anybody wanted to take on that fan project. I wouldn't know how to begin about it. I did download that GB Studio at one point to try to make my own Game Boy game. That obviously did not go very well. A Game Boy game has not been created or even been like remotely created. But as you're journeying through all of this, eventually you do find a skeleton key inside of a tree. And it's like, why is the skeleton key like in the tree? I don't know, like that's a really odd place for Morton just like to toss the main key to his entire castle off to the side here. You eventually find a power generator, and you can use your gloves to disable the power generator. You get like a little explosive, you blow up the fuse box to journey through this electrified wall. And once you go through the electrified wall, we're journeying into more like the outside caves of his overall mansion here. And the caves are really well designed. They have like little torches, you know, giving like little light effects. Even has like a sound effect for the torch, which is pretty cool. There's not a lot of sound in this game. There's no soundtrack at all. And so the idea that you get like little environmental sound effects here and there, you're always happy when you actually hear them. And eventually get to a glowing fountain. If you go up to the glowing fountain and you like partake of the glowing fountain, you are then transported down into the underworld. So you are officially in the underworld here that Morton is trying to become the ruler of. And the underworld, as far as like the environment goes, reminds me so much of like the Alien movies, like when an alien has taken over like a spaceship or something and turned it like into its nest or its hive. Like it looks very similar to that. Endless corridors, easy to get lost in here. But if you just simply find the blue crystal, like the blue crystal illuminates a gold path on the ground, and you can take that gold path on the ground, and it's going to take you pretty much exactly where you need to go. Now, also as far as like battles in the underworld here, you get a really haunting looking creature here. It's like a shadow beast with only like 2 legs, elongated on top. I mean, I don't even know how to describe it, except for the fact like this is something that like you would see like in nightmare material. And so a really, really cool imagery for that. You eventually journey through the underworld, you climb down a rope, you find the statue or the statuette that you need, but there's a force field around it. So you have to find like a totem pole that has a force field on top of it, use your explosives to blow that up. And once you blow that up, then you can finally go up to the statuette, take the statuette, and when you take it, it makes you glow once again. You go back to the main world, and you're back inside of Morton's house. And you're like, all right, if I'm back inside the house, how do I find Morton? How do I finally take Morton out here? If you journey around a little bit, you're going to resupply yourself on potions and ammo, things like that. Fisk is going to talk to you one more time, saying like, you've got to take Morton out. He's right outside the gates. You head outside the gates, and you do find Morton wandering around the courtyard here. And when you get into your final battle with him, it's going to be the exact same as your last battle. Find your way next to the wall, back yourself up against the wall, and you can pretty much take him out in no time. Now, he is a cool looking sprite. I'll give him that. He looks very close to what the PlayStation 2 version looks like, but it's a very, very easy battle to take him out here, especially if you picked up the crossbow. And I didn't mention that earlier in the video. The crossbow is literally just like on the ground at one point, and you could easily like walk over the crossbow and never realize that you missed it. But if you don't have the crossbow, you're probably going to run out of ammo and you're going to have a tough time finishing the game. So make sure you do have that crossbow that you need to defeat him. Now, when you kill him off, you do say some like corny action phrase like "rot in hell, Morton" or something like that. It comes across pretty cringy. And then you phone back to the archaeologist, and then she brings her plane down. You get on the plane, and then off y'all go into the sunset. And she's a little disappointed because the statuette was destroyed in the battle against Morton, but you did get a blue crystal, so she's happy about that. And she's also happy that Charles Fisk, your best friend, is going to be able to journey off into the afterlife. And the story is overall resolved here. You know, you took out Morton, the underworld is sealed off again. I mean, it's a good ending to a story. I mean, there's really no cliffhanger to make you wonder about what's going to happen next, except for what adventures they're going to have with this particular blue crystal. And at this point, the credits do begin to roll, but let's talk about the game as an overall here, because me personally, I did find this game fairly charming. I know it's not like the most complex combat. It's just sort of a serviceable combat, to be honest. The overarching story is not like the most amazing story, and really the main reason to like this game is just sort of the overall graphics. But to me, there's just something charming about it. It brings back like the PS1 era of like Resident Evil, or like sort of the top-down pre-rendered graphics of Final Fantasy, and it's just a nostalgic feeling that I enjoyed as I was going through the game. I can't say it's like the most amazing game, but I did have a good time going through it, and I think it's more than just simply a tech demo for the system. Because like when you get into the game and you get past the graphics a little bit, you just simply have a good time exploring the mansion, exploring the caves, exploring all the different environments, and I don't know. I think it's a fun time to go through it. Is it the greatest game ever? Of course not, but it is a fun game. I'm gonna give it a 6.5 out of 10, and I feel like it deserves every bit of those points. But what do you all think? Do you enjoy Alone in the Dark, The New Nightmare? Let me know in the comments down below. As always, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Check out my other videos listed up above, and go out there, find a great game to play. Simply have a great rest of the day.